All right, hi everyone, and welcome to our session on being an MS Teams owner. My name is Adam DiProspero, and I'm joined by my co-host Cheryl Dickey. We're both from Talent Acquisition and Development, and we're very thankful for the opportunity to chat with you all today about this topic. So we are also joined on the line with Bruce Fisher, and Bruce has been joining us for all these sessions. We're very grateful for his time, especially during such a critical time with everything going on in the university. So thank you very much, Bruce. So Bruce joins us from UIT, Systems Management Services, SMS, and he's going to be helping to answer some of the questions that you all might have in the chat today. So the course will primarily focus on tasks that are reserved for team site owners, but we are going to cover a few other topics that are technically available to the site members as well, but we feel they're important that the owners are aware of them and know how they're being used and how the owners can kind of leverage some of that information. So for example, accessing the underlying SharePoint. Everyone can do it, but it's really important that the owners understand it and implement it in a certain way, or use it in a certain way, I should say. And we're going to get into that very, very shortly, actually. For this session, we're going to ask that if you do want to contribute, please click on the participants button in Zoom and click on the raise hand. When I get to a logical break in my presentation, I will field a few questions. Keep in mind, we do have a lot to cover, so I'll make sure to answer a couple of questions. I might not be able to get to all of them. But if not, rest assured you can send us an email at ldtech@urq.ca and we'll be able to answer your questions that way as well. All right, the agenda for today. So we're going to start with a basic Teams site that has already been set up with the default settings. We will first try to understand the typical settings and the kind of approach to take with a new team site. And then we're going to loop back and see what options to consider when starting a site from scratch. Okay, we're gonna save that for later on, just because there's so much to get into, and I imagine a lot of you are already Teams owners or familiar with setting up a team. So we wanna put the meat of it up front, just in case we are running a long time there. So we're gonna start off by discussing Teams and SharePoint, how they're related. From there, we're going to look at some of the considerations. What exactly does it mean to be a team owner? What are the responsibilities a team owner has? Then we'll move on to the actual settings that a team owner has control over. We'll see the channel settings, how to set up tabs, what the difference between a standard channel, a general channel, and private channels are. And then we'll get into this whole topic of creating a new team site from scratch, because there are a few considerations there when you're setting up your team, in ways that if you have a little bit of knowledge and planning, you can make a difference into how your team site operates. And if we have time, we'll finish up by looking at the different connectors and bots and some of these neat things that we'll leave you with at the end of the session that you can kind of go off and explore on your own. Okay, so our assumptions for the course. So we assume that everyone has that basic familiarity with Office 365, and that at the very least you are either a member or an owner of a team site. If not, you have a general interest in learning about these owner-specific settings. If you are new to Teams, like with our other courses, we do have this resource here that provides you with some of the documentation from our previous intro to team sessions and a few other things. And like I did for the other classes, I'll send off an email in the coming days that include the resources to get up to speed, not only if you're new, but also everything we covered today. Okay, our first thing that we're going to get into, just before we get into what it means to be a team owner, is SharePoint. A little bit of a discussion around where SharePoint factors into all of it. So I'll flip back here to our Teams and SharePoint slide, and I will open up the Teams site. Okay, so we're in our Teams app right now, and you may not know this, but all of your Teams sites, so each of these sites, is built on top of a SharePoint site. So if I were to click on any one of these, my virtual U demo here, and I were to go into the files area, you may have seen this button just right up here in the files area, open in SharePoint. So if you click this, what will happen is the browser will load and it will show you the underlying SharePoint site. So this is, your team is just built on top of that. So you can see you have access over here. I can click on manage access and it shows me all the individuals or groups that have access and the different read, write, owner permissions there. And if you have a notebook, you'll have the notebook area over here. So you can see it's opening up that specific notebook. So I don't want to get too much into it. And I think for the most part, you don't need to access the SharePoint site, but it is important to be aware that Teams is built on top of SharePoint if SharePoint is something you're used to working out of. And there are a few areas specifically around permissions and sharing where the SharePoint access is extremely vital. So I wanted to start by just showing you that and making it clear that Teams and SharePoint very much go hand in hand. And I'm doing this now because we will be referring to this in a few different areas as we go on. So I want to make that clear there. So let's go back to the slides and talk about, well, what exactly does it mean to be an owner? So as an owner, you have access to a wide range of settings that can impact things like how members actually use a team. The types of communication that are permitted or that are restricted. Can members post inside a specific channel, or can only owners post in there? So owners can control that. Okay, so essentially what the members can and can't do. So beyond that, we also need to remember that being an owner is more than just setting up a bunch of settings, saying what they can and can't do, and then that's it, letting your members go off and use it. If you want your team to flourish, there are a few tasks that owners should keep in mind. So we have those listed out over here. First and foremost, if you're setting up a new team from scratch, consider sending out an email message to all team members, providing an overview of what the intention of the team is, how it should be used. Ensure that once you've actually set up your team, everyone that you want to be a member, they can actually access the team. They're able to get in there and they have an awareness around the notifications, how the notification system works. So you have to put in a little bit of time to get everyone up to speed, especially if this is their first time using Teams. It's good to check in with your team to ensure that the current settings, as we're going to see all the different settings you can enable, are actually working for people. One example of this is in our group, one of our members created a private channel, and we were all under the impression that, well, okay, she created the private channel, but since Cheryl and I are team owners, that we would be able to manage that channel. And we found out, well, no, that's not the case. Whoever creates the private channel is in fact the owner of that private channel. So it was important for us to have the conversation outside of Teams and figure out, okay, should we have owner control of that specific channel? And if so, grant it. So these kind of things where as you go on, there's might be unexpected restrictions or maybe too much access, and figuring that out, having the conversation and making those changes as you go along. It's a really fluid process. And then finally, remember that as you get new team members, you have to add them. Someone new physically comes on board in your department, but also remove people that no longer need access. So it might be that someone's in your team, it's a team specifically for a certain project, and they're not involved in that project anymore. So, you could remove them, and it works both ways. For one, they are not gonna see that team on their Teams app, and they don't have to be bombarded with whatever messages are in there that are no longer relevant to them. And from your end of things, you keep things secure and nice and neat. Okay. So if, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's important to kind of think of it just more than just the settings you're enabling, but how you can really generate discussion around what's going into the team and have people involved in it, and making sure that everyone knows how they can contribute to the team itself. Okay, next really big question. This is not an easy topic at all, but when do you actually create a team? Okay, so here are some questions to consider. You got to think about what makes sense when you're creating your team. So you might have other options. Maybe creating a brand new team isn't the best path to take. So is there an existing team with all of the required members? And if so, does it make sense to make a channel within that team? You might be in the situation where you have a team, you have majority of members, but there's a few people that aren't members of that team. Doesn't make sense to add them. So if you're in the situation where you just need to include people from outside of the existing team, consider taking whatever document or folder that you want to work on with those individuals and just share those out and use the comment system within O365 to facilitate discussion around it that way. So you don't have to, if that's the use case, you just want to share specific files or folders, you can do that without having to create a brand new team. Okay, and I can show that to you right now. So in my team over here, my training accounts, let's say under the files area, I have this file, and I know there's people outside of the training group that are going to need access to it. So what I can do is, instead of inviting those people to the team or creating a whole new team and moving these files, I'll click on the Open in SharePoint button. It's going to load up a new page. And from here, I can click on the Share button. And I can click on Manage Access. And then now it's very easy for me to see who has access to this. And I can click Share. Heck, I can even do it right from here, this little Share button. It's the same thing. I can click on that and share it with specific people. Okay. And now just start typing up the names of those individuals. Okay, and then as I start typing them up, I'll find them, and I'm able to effectively keep this item inside of my team and then share it out to other people who might need it. Okay, I don't need to create a whole new team to do that. So very nice. Okay, well, what if you're not looking to share files, but you're looking to generate conversation, have discussions, maybe share a couple of files along the way? Well, you don't need a team for that. You can create a chat group instead. I can show that as well. So if I go over to the chat area, I can create a new conversation and start inviting specific people. So Robin, Cheryl, whoever else. Okay. And now I can start typing a message to these individuals. I still have a files tab, so whatever I post in there gets shared with each of them. So another consideration, another way to do it. Also, is it a short-term project that's, maybe it's something that you're going to just be working on it for a couple of weeks. You don't need to spin up a whole new team for that. Again, you could get away with using the chat and sharing files in there. Of course, at the end of the day, if you need to leverage all the different features in a team, go ahead, create a team for it. But if it's a short-term thing like that, remember to delete the team when it's no longer being used. This will help keep everything clean within your team's app and for other users as well. Okay. If you're in the situation where maybe you did create a team, you had some discussion going there, and you realize, you know what, this is probably overkill. I didn't need to create a whole team for that. You can, remember, you can't necessarily transfer posts and conversations, stuff like that. But whatever files you generate in that team, you can migrate to other teams or to someone's OneDrive or some other areas. Keep that in mind. All right, so our default team settings. Inside of our Teams app, when we are looking at all of our different teams, to actually change the settings for that team, it's a matter of clicking on More Options and then Manage Team right up here. So you can see there's many different settings. We have a whole bunch of tabs. I'm not going to go into everything in like great detail. I'll leave it up to you to kind of explore. Most of them are very much self-explanatory. I want to go over a few of the details. Also, a big note. When deciding on the settings, you might think like, oh, I don't want to lock this down. Like if we're over here, member permissions, like, I don't want to take some of the control away from my members. But don't think of it as like, you're being controlling, because you have to remember, by locking down certain areas, you're designing an environment that is going to work better for the group, okay, to help reduce confusion and to reduce mistakes that might be created through misunderstanding, right? So sometimes it's nice to kind of lock things down and then wait for people to actually say, hey, how come I can't do this? And then at that point, everyone understands, what the implications are, what the benefits are. Then you can go in there and start enabling different things. So let's start over here at the members tab. And it's pretty straightforward. You can see who your owners and your members and guests are. Okay. We have a cool tag system here that allows you to tag, to group different members into tags and use those tags as @mentions. So you can see here we have songbirds tag group and CSTL training. So if I click on this little tag icon, I can start to create tags. So I'll click on manage tags, and you can see that we have existing tags here. So essentially what this will be is, my first example that I like to use is within the talent acquisition group, we have two parts. We have talent acquisition and development, okay? So in our TAD team, our talent acquisition team, maybe Laura wants to post something, but it really only concerns development. So instead of mentioning the team, we can create a tag that's specifically for development, add in those members. So I'll show you, you create a tag, you call it development. Okay, that's the tag name, and then start adding people. Okay, so now we have 10 people in this tag over here, and you just need to mention that tag name, and it will mention those specific people. A great idea that Cheryl had is, if you do have a team where you have multiple owners, right? Create a owners tag for your team. So at any point, if someone needs to reach out to an owner, they can mention that owners tag, or if even the owners need to flag something for each other, they can do that. So really nifty way of handling mentioning individual people, but without having to list them all out. You can just use the tag there. Some other great features on this members page, you can switch the roles. So if I go down to my members section, I can switch anyone from a member to an owner, provided they are a member and not a guest. You can't do that with guests. Under the add members area, again, this is very much self-explanatory, but I want to point out something neat. Along with just adding individual people, you can add whole groups as well. So if I know that, for example, I'm creating this really big team, maybe it's all of HR, and instead of going in and adding every single person from talent acquisition and development, I can just type that in, talent acquisition team, okay? And by clicking this little down arrow, I could expand it out. And now I see all of the members, and I can say, okay, yeah, these are all the people we want to add, and I can continue adding more people. So save you quite a bit of time instead of typing up everyone individually. And of course, you can go in and delete whoever you don't need there. A note on guests. So if someone is not in the York system, you can still add them. So I can go and add my Gmail account here. And what will happen is they will get an email asking them to register their email address with Microsoft. So even if it's a Gmail, Yahoo, whatever else, they can still sign up and use the team site that way. Okay, so once they've signed up, they've registered with the Microsoft account, they're able to access the content. So guests can't use some of the overall O365 features. So they can't create a team from scratch. They can't use that browse a team feature that you might have seen. They won't be able to use the OneDrive for Business, all those features tied in there. And they can't do like people searches, use calendar and stuff like that. So it is, it's not, full access, but for the most part of taking part in chats and in posting and viewing files, all of that works quite nicely. Okay, so let's go on now. Pending requests, that's just an area if people are trying to join your team, you'll see that listed out there. Skip over that. Channels tab, this too, it's pretty straightforward. For each channel, you can say whether or not you as the owner, or not, I shouldn't even say owner, but just your specific account, if you want to see or hide those channels. And this one's more important. You can set whether all of your team members can see or hide channels. This column right here shows you whether or not the channel is a standard or a private channel type. So we'll move over to settings. And this is really where you get a lot of the fine-grained settings. So some big ones, member permissions. This is where you can go in and choose whether or not your members have access to creating and updating channels, private channels, working with tabs, and so on. Okay, another area that's worth noting is the mentions area. So we're always recommending people use mentions, but they're courteous with it, not mentioning whole channels or whole teams when only a subset of those people should be involved. If you're part of like a really massive team and you find that people are, maybe it's not so clear to some people on how to use @team and @channel mentions. So in that case, if you find it's like the Wild West and people are throwing these out all over and it's driving people nuts, you can disable them. I think it's best to first send out a message to everyone, just maybe explaining, you know, use @team or @channel only in certain situations where it does affect all the individuals. And then as a second, you know, as a last resort, if that still doesn't work and people don't get the message, then consider going in here and disabling it, just so you're not turning everyone off to the idea of using teams. All right, and then we have analytics over here, which shows you a bunch of neat stats around the usage of the team. And then the final tab, apps, shows you all the different plugins, and some of these just come built in, like OneNote and Planner, and some of the other ones you could install on your own. Well, I'm going to skip over this because this is a really big area. This probably takes up a course on its own. But if we have time at the end, I'll mention some of the different app stuff we can do there. Okay, so that covers your channel settings. Again, you click on 3 dots, manage team, and then you get into all of your team settings, I should say, not channel settings. Next, we're going to look at channel settings. So if you want to make changes on like the global level, you can do that here. But you can see it's very basic, just showing, you're deciding which channels will show or be hidden for you and for your members. If you want to make changes to specific channels, you can click on the 3 dots beside the channel, and you can go to manage channel. Now, anything you change over here is going to apply for all of your users. So let's get started with the general channel here. So all team sites come with a general channel, and it differs from the rest of the channels in the way that it can't be removed. Your general channel is always going to be there, and it has its own set of permissions here. So it's up to us as team owners to decide how we want the general channel to be used. So by default, you know, anyone can post messages in there, but this is a really nice area worth exploring. This is something that I was chatting with Bruce about, and you know, Microsoft recommends is setting it up so that only owners can post messages in the general channel. Okay, so by default, it looks like the general channel, when people are being added and removed from teams, when channels are getting created, there's a message that will appear on the general channel. So if you're using the general channel to have just like standard conversations, all those messages are going to get lost in the mix. So by setting it to this setting, you're not going to have all the team members going in there and posting all their content. Everything else is going to get lost. What Bruce suggests is, you know, you still need somewhere for people to go and have these nice conversations. So setting up a water cooler channel and making that open so anyone can go in there and post their content. Okay, so that's the general channel. I'll leave it like this for now. But if we look at any of our other channels, these are just standard channels now. It's not general. It's a standard channel. And you can see the notifications are a little different. So you still have that ability to turn on channel moderation on or off. But now you could choose who the moderators are. Okay, so when turned on, the owner can actually go in. So let me turn this on here. So that's on and off. And set moderators to kind of determine, well, they will be the ones to actually post messages. okay, to that channel there. Members will not be able to post new messages, and you can choose, so as an owner, you can choose whether or not members can reply back to existing messages. So we'll look at this. So our action items channel, I'm going to bring up my test account here. You bear with me. And we'll see what this looks like. So, one sec, I'll sign in here. All right, so I'm on my team site for one of the non-owners, so this is a member. And I'll go to that same CSDTL training accounts. And if they go to action items, you can see it says only channel moderators can post. So although only channel moderators can post, you're still able to find any of the existing posts and reply. So you can't post a new message, but you could reply, okay? So the idea here is you can set up a channel that's like specifically meant for announcements, okay? So your general channel, that's like really high level stuff. When people are added, removed, when new channels are created. And then you can have another thing for announcements, and that's where you have your announcements around departmental news and things like that. And people can't post to it, but they can reply to it. So let's look at some details for setting up the announcements channel. Okay, so some of our recommendations here. One, set up a channel specifically for the announcements, set up moderation on that channel. Make sure that everyone knows who the moderators are. The moderators themselves are aware of their specific. And make the decision if you want people to be able to reply to channel messages or turn it off. It's completely up to you. It's kind of nice to allow people to apply to it because then you can see that interaction there. The moderator posts something and then you see the people kind of come in and your members come in and reply back to it. And it allows for a discussion, which is nice. The next step is to make sure that all of your members have that, for their notifications, they've set it to all posts. So I'll show you what that means. As a member, I would go to my channel, say channel notifications, and I would make sure that this all new post is set to banner and feed, let's say, so that anytime a moderator posts something, they're going to get that, and then the same thing for at the channel mentions there. So the idea is, let everyone know the comings and goings in your department, but also this would be a good area to announce when other channels or some important content is created and provide a link right to it. Okay, the next thing we can get into is our channel tab. So we have a channel here, and by default we have two tabs, the posts and the files tabs. Okay, and it's possible to add new tabs just by clicking on the plus icon. And from here, you're presented with a number of different tab options, including Office files, other Office apps like planners, forms. So here are a few notes regarding the tabs. One, when adding an Office doc, like if I want to add an Excel file, it must be stored within your team site, or else you won't be able to add it. And two, if you want to add a URL, if you want to add a website, maybe like our employee learning calendar, you want to have that on your team site. So you can just go give the tab a name, paste in your link, and it's as easy as that. Okay. So some examples, let's look at this. If I go to my actual CSDTL staff team here, under course material, or under clients, we have our client tracker. Under generals, we have our help call tracker. So what we did was, instead of going into the H drive, digging for this Excel file every time we needed to update our help call list, we have this help call tracker that Cheryl mounted directly as a tab. Really nice. I can go right in here, type my values directly in there, okay? So it makes it extremely easy. You could also mount a planner. So if we go back to our virtual U over here, you can see that I can click on the plus. I could do a planner over here, and I could add this directly. And you can see this is one of our apps, right? So another example, another way to integrate secondary app right into your team site. Okay, next topic. So that all this, we're speaking about standard channels. We have our channel, and we're able to go and add in tabs to that channel. There's a second type of channel, or I should say third. First being general channel, second being our standard channel, and then the third is a private channel. So you can see here, this channel has a little lock beside it. And with private channels, it's a newer feature to Teams, and it allows a channel to only be visible by specified team members. So some example scenarios might be, we have, again, our talent acquisition and development team site. We're creating our Sway newsletter that most of you found out about, of course, through that. And really not everyone needs access to that to see it, to be aware of it. So we set up a private channel for a subset of the members to discuss that content. Now, another really good use for this is if you have confidential information, sensitive information that maybe the whole team doesn't need to see. Maybe you have a group of managers within your team and they want to have manager discussions. You can set that up. Maybe there's a subcommittee and they do discuss sensitive student type information. You can set up a private channel. So whatever happens in there is strictly taking place in there. So creating a private channel, Teams owners or members by default can create private channels. So guests can't create them, but they can be added to one. However, owners are able to turn off the ability for members to create private channels. The person who creates a private channel is that channel's owner. So owners can add other owners to a private channel, but only private channel owners can add or remove people from it. So to create a channel, you go up to the area right here, and then you could say add channel, set it up, and just make sure to set it to private. And there you go, you have your private channel once you click next and go through that. So unlike standard channels, private channels have a different setting group. So if I go to manage channel, you can see here we have our members area. Regular channels don't have a members area. Then we have a settings area that includes member permissions. So I'll bring up my slide over here and we can compare the two. So our private channel has the following settings versus our standard channel only has that channel moderation, okay? These settings over here, allowing members to create, update, and remove tabs, these get inherited from the parent team that channel belongs to. So remember, we looked at similar settings when we started this whole journey into being a Teams owner. And so how it works is these get inherited into the private channel area, but then from there you can check and uncheck whatever you want and make changes independently of the parent channel, parent team. You can't add members into a private channel that are outside of the parent team site. So they have to first be a member of the team site, then you can add them to the channel. Okay, so some implications of private channels. You have to remember that each private channel is its own SharePoint site. This is completely separate. It's a completely separate SharePoint site from the overarching team site, okay? So a private channel, along with that, does not fully support all tab types. We saw earlier that we were able to add planner and all that, but in this confidential channel here, if we click on the plus, you can see we can't add a planner. We don't have stream and form. So those are the three big ones that we're unable to add there, okay? The other note is that a private channel, a team can only have a max of 30 private channels. Okay, and now we go over here. I provided you, Microsoft came up with this really nice breakdown on when to use private channels, when maybe you should just create a whole new team. So is there already a team that has these people? So yes, we already have a team that has these people. Does this need to be kept private from others? Yes. Are there multiple distinct topics to discuss? Yes, create a private channel. You can see as you go on down, depending on what you answer, there'll be times where you're just creating a team, or other times where you're creating a team and then creating separate channels within that. So a nice little chart. I'll have a link for all of you at the end to see this. All right, so now we're kind of into the second half of the course, creating a team from scratch and some of the suggested settings and approaches for this. So to create a team, we're going to go back to our teams area here, and you can just click on create or join a team. And you click on create a team. And when you do this, you get 4 options over here: class, PLC, staff, and other. I believe the first 2 options were designed for like the school boards, the school systems, high school, grade school. And so we're not recommending these for people to use. If you already created something with it and it's working for you, don't worry, that's fine. Like really, like, you know, maybe getting too much into the weeds here, but to my understanding, these 2 are tied to the underlying like user identities of being a teacher, being a student. We don't have that here, so you wouldn't really be impacted. Staff and other, this is where it gets a little more confusing. People automatically think, oh, well, we're staff, you know, we're non-academic staff. Let's go for that option. Click on that. Well, we are recommending people use the other option over here. And I'll just go to my slide here. And we're recommending that other type because when you click on staff, it includes a specialized notebook. And maybe this is something you're into, something that you think you can use. If so, feel free to use staff, but just understand what it is. So when you click on the staff teams type, it automatically generates this specialized staff notebook that will include a section for each staff member. So if you're on a team with 20 people, you're gonna have 20 different sections in another book, 1 for each of those members. As a member, you only see your own section, but as the team owner, you're gonna see a tab for each of your members, okay? So the owner is able to go in and collaborate with each of their staff members, and each of those staff members only see their own notebook. So it's kind of, their own section, I should say. It's kind of neat, but the problem is you can't actually remove that notebook from the team site. So we worked with a few clients where this was not exactly the notebook that they had in mind. They didn't want each staff to have their own section. So it was a bit annoying and very difficult to kind of get rid of that notebook. Luckily, they were early on in using their team site, so we helped them to kind of migrate over we suggested they migrate over their content to a new team site in order to not have to deal with that very strange notebook setup in their case at least. So if this is something you're interested in, go for the staff setting. But like I said, we are very much recommending that people choose the other setting. So I'll choose other. We provide a team name over here for our site. And so I'll just say, something like that. You can set the privacy, whether this is anyone can join or only owners can add members. And notice at the bottom, I have these 2 options that I really like. Create a team using an existing team as a template. So if you already are a part of a team, you like the way it's been set up, you can select that team. Be careful, if you do select that option, you can inadvertently through the settings. So like as I click on that and go through it, if I choose one of these, like, you know, I don't see it here, but there's a UIT team. If I choose that and I go on, I can accidentally choose to import the members as well. So now all of a sudden 171 people are getting an email from me saying that you've been invited to Adam's team, right? So you got to be careful with that. I'll cancel out of that. I'll go back into it. The other option is create a team using a group set up by you or your university. So if you are in the position where maybe you have an Outlook group or you're part of an Outlook group, this is a nice option because you can pick up on that existing Outlook group that you're a part of and use that as a basis. Now, if you're not a part of the group you're interested in, but you still want to invite the people from that group. When you create the team, when it comes time to add members, remember you can do this. You can type in the name of a group and you'll be able to pull in all those members as well. Okay, so that's the final step, adding the members. You're done and you're gonna have your team there. Okay, next is to decide what exactly you want to bring over. This is the big thing that comes up a lot. I have my team. I kind of want to move a lot of my content over. So teams and Teams and Teams and OneNote, or sorry, OneDrive, are both approved by the university for uh, storing confidential files, except for payment card industry data, personal health information. So you can start moving over all of your stuff as long as it doesn't fall into one of these categories. Um, Moving departmental files, we recommend copying collections of files instead of just copying one of the files you need. Today, I have this whole folder of our course materials. I'm just going to copy over the Teams course. No, it's better to take it all and grab all of those course materials, drag them all over. After copying the files to Teams, we recommend either deleting the files from your network drive or archiving them uh, for a certain period of time before deleting them. After moving a file, leave a Word document or something to give you details of where those files have been moved to. So the big thing really is like, don't panic, take the time, talk to the group, plan it out. Okay, start by picking one logical area that makes sense to move over. For example, we decided to move over all of our course materials, including our instructor guides, handouts, everything else. And we moved that all at once, like I said. So at first, we needed to adjust, but in time, we were able to access the files in Teams instead of on FAS. Okay. The final thing is, really encourage usage amongst your team. So make sure everyone has the team app installed and set up, and they're not relying on the web interface. Do like what Bruce is talking about, create a water cooler channel where people can go in and have casual conversation. That will really help. It might seem like a silly thing, but I know in our case, with this whole virtual situation, working from home, it really helped people get used to loading Teams in the morning because you would be guaranteed to see some funny meme that Marcella has posted, or some nice encouraging comments from Jennifer, from Vanessa. So it's kind of like a neat thing to have set up there. Okay. So that's it for the core of the session. These are the resources that I've been using throughout the session to build it. They're all Microsoft resources. Keep an eye out for an email from us that will include all these links as well, and a few other details, including the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your